considered a declaration of war on Kenya. Speaking during a visit to a construction site, he warned against attempts to overthrow the government.
I saw them saying that they won't wait for the elections in 2027. They want to plan chaos, protests, burn people's property, cause death in Kenya, so that they can overthrow the Kenyan government before 2027. I dare them to try.
And back to South Africa, where the Defence Minister of Military and Veterans, Angie Motshekga, has confirmed that 2,250 members, all of them of the South African National Defence Force that were deployed to the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, have returned home. Motshekga added that the only outstanding matter is the retrieval of military equipment, which is currently being stored in Tanzania.
Meanwhile, all our prime mission equipment has also been withdrawn from the Eastern DRC. It's currently in Tanzania. It's being verified, will be loaded back by air and sea, and will be back home. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the government of Rwanda for allowing us a safe passage through their territory into Tanzania, and further wish to thank the governments of Tanzania, Malawi, and the parties involved in the safe withdrawal of our members.
And South Africa's Health Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi says combined efforts by international donors and Treasury will ensure that the country's HIV/AIDS program can continue. Motsoaledi presented his department's $17 billion budget vote in the National Assembly earlier this year. The United States President Donald Trump's emergency plan for AIDS relief, or PEPFAR, was withdrawn. It left a funding gap of about $449,000. Motsoaledi says the department sought assistance from local and international donors to ensure that the HIV/AIDS program will not collapse.
Treasury has allocated $553,528,000 for us to start the process of reversing the going away of Trump. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have given us an offer. They said each one of them can pay 100 million rand for research, provided that our Treasury must add 200 for every 100 they've given. Treasury is going to add 400 million rand.
And Morocco plans to build a 500-megawatt state-owned data center powered by renewable energy to strengthen security of data storage. The country's digital minister, Amal Al-Falah Segrochini, says the center will be located in Dakhla in the Western Sahara. Chanduko Ligege has the details.
Several countries are building state-owned data centers to ensure that sensitive data can be stored and processed within national borders. Morocco launched its first sovereign center in January. It has been offering cloud hosting services to local public and private organizations. Minister Segrochini says through this network of data centers, the kingdom not only asserts its digital sovereignty but also its ambition to become a regional digital hub serving Africa. Morocco plans to invest $1.22 billion on its digital modernization strategy, which includes artificial intelligence and expanding fiber optic deployment.
And finally, Africa Unlocked has kicked off today in Cape Town, South Africa. Returning for its second consecutive year, 2025, Africa Unlocked is a strategic movement shaping the future of African commerce, investment and industrialization through dynamic dialogue and cutting-edge insights. Executive Head of Africa Regions and Offshore for Business and Commercial Banking, Andrew Mashanda, explains.
So in terms of our objectives, again, we'll continue with the theme of redefining Africa's narrative, looking at how we can shift Africa from aid dependency to actually full participation in the global value chains and having a significant influence. We're also looking at intra-Africa trade. How do we accelerate the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement? We also want to showcase the innovation that exists across the continent.
Tshepiso Makwetla winds it down on Africa World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
And that brings the time to 8 minutes past 9. Just in this hour, we'll be talking about the South African Human Rights Commission hosting a 2-day high-level summit on human rights and disinformation in the city of Gqeberha. But first, let's go back to that story that we mentioned was coming up, that 5 West African leaders are in Washington this week for a 3-day summit hosted by U.S. President Donald Trump. The presidents of Liberia, Senegal, Gabon, Mauritania and Guinea-Bissau are meeting with the U.S. administration under the banner of commercial opportunity. But behind the scenes, questions remain about the real motives and likely outcomes of the surprise diplomatic engagement. Joining us now to speak about the significance of the summit is Michelle Gavin, Senior Fellow for Africa Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations and former U.S. Ambassador to Botswana. She brings a decade of experience in U.S.-Africa relations, diplomacy, and governance issues. A warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's just first start with the constellation of countries, Liberia, Senegal, Gabon, Mauritania, Guinea-Bissau. It's quite an interesting mix of countries to be together for this 3-day summit. Would they have been well considered in terms of, the as a party before being invited together en masse?
It was quite a puzzling group of countries to bring together, and it's difficult to understand why, if the administration's agenda is to pivot toward more commercial diplomacy, why these countries, many of which are fairly small economies, would be at the top of the list. So from a governance perspective, the security issues the U.S. is concerned with, this is a very puzzling group.
So what would you say then would probably be the real reason for this group of countries and leaders to come together? Because as you say, we've seen from the conversations that the U.S. has been having, a great deal of it has been motivated by access to mineral resources. These countries, why?
Well, some of these countries have some significant mineral resources, although not all of them. And so, how did this happen? Honestly, I think there was sort of an ad hoc nature to this exercise. Apparently, President Trump encountered the president of Guinea-Bissau at an event earlier, and that's hence the invitation was extended. Apparently, the Liberian president was going to be in the U.S. anyway, and so I don't actually think this is terribly well thought out. And based on the coverage of the public part of the meeting, it's clear the president wasn't terribly well briefed on what countries were represented or what the U.S. relationship with them had been like. So I have to say, it's really hard to discern any kind of clear strategy or thoughtfulness. That said, engagement is good. I'd rather the U.S. be talking with African leaders than not.
Okay, so some have said that, if you look at these countries, they occupy strategic coastal positions. So perhaps maritime insecurity may be at the core of the invitation of them as a collective.
Perhaps. I mean, that there are a number of strategically significant coastal countries that were not in this group. And the framing around commercial diplomacy vice a security framing does, I think, lead to questions. So perhaps there's a well-considered plan to gain access to critical coastlines in exchange for favorable commercial deals. But summits usually take a lot of spade work ahead of time. There's a lot that's done at the staff level, right, to sort of tee up some ideas and deliverables. And it's not clear to me that that is the case here. Perhaps there'll be some big announcements later, but it feels very underbaked.
And there is also the competition for the affections of African countries between the US and China. So could it be part of the playing both sides strategy of endearing themselves to, if you look at a country like Guinea-Bissau, which is seeing some political instability, to ensure that whoever then is at the helm is placed in a position that maybe they rather prefer the United States or would look more favorably towards the United States than China. Could that also be a possible motive?
Absolutely. It's clear there is some element of charm offensive here, and trying to put some meat on the bones of the sloganeering, right? That yes, we've dramatically slashed development assistance, but that's because we're pivoting to more trade deals. So yes, I think to some degree this is about competition with other major powers, but I think there are a lot of questions to be asked about whether kind of engagement with this set of leaders will deliver kind of long-term goodwill toward the U.S. Throughout West Africa.
So beyond the geopolitical competition, I mean, the whole conversation around trade tariffs and whether a country is behaving or not will obviously determine the extent of the tariffs imposed on them, as we've seen with South Africa. Is there an opportunity of, improving the landscape just in terms of what currently exists? And would these countries unlock that?
I think there is that opportunity. It seems to be the case that policy around tariffs to some degree is a function of one man's predisposition toward a different country, right? So I think establishing a rapport with President Trump may well help some of these countries escape from the 10% tariff. Interestingly, the issue of AGOA extension was raised, and the president said, well, we'll look into it. He often says that when he's sort of unfamiliar with a topic, so I wouldn't read too much into it. But I do think that all of these leaders are wisely trying to establish that kind of personal relationship that in this administration can translate into policy.
So I believe that in Liberia, China's presence is growing, particularly in the media sector. That would, I'd imagine, be something that would be disconcerting for the United States.
You would think, but then this rush to dismantle the Voice of America, there are a set of mixed messages coming out of this administration about wanting to compete with China, but then not actually wanting to make some of those investments. So it's a bit difficult sometimes to see the consistency or understand exactly what is the end state this administration is hoping to drive toward.
Any other thoughts on, I mean, you spoke about AGOA, and with that having been weakened, taken off the table, particularly for some countries, what other avenues would there be to explore if we're talking about shortening the supply chain route?
Well, I do think that the interest in commercial diplomacy is sincere in the sense that there is a recognition throughout this administration, and that's shared by many, that the U.S. has really been slow, lumbering, and has failed with its market differentiation and not been kind of aggressively looking for the kinds of opportunities that can be beneficial on both sides of a trade or investment equation. I think that is fundamentally positive. It's just that, wanting to see more deals and actually having viable, mutually beneficial deals that make sense are kind of two different things. And there is a lot of work that goes into teeing these things up. And this kind of ad hocery, it does not give me a lot of confidence at this stage.
And just finally, could there be a more sinister reason behind it? And by sinister, I don't even know what I mean. What would then amount to sinister?
I don't see necessarily a sinister agenda here. I just see one that's not terribly well fleshed out. But, the U.S., the fundamental U.S. interests are concerns about our own security, about freedom of navigation, about supply chains, and particularly critical minerals. Those have been consistent for some time, and I don't think that pursuing those interests is a sinister exercise. Every country pursues their national interests. So I think we'll just have to see what actually develops as a result of this sort of hastily arranged summit.
Well, we do hope to speak to you as and when it concludes. Really thank you for your time and your insights. Michelle Gavin, Senior Fellow for Africa Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations and former U.S. Ambassador to Botswana, just speaking to us about that 3-day U.S. West Africa Summit in Washington. In attendance will be the presidents of Liberia, Senegal, Gabon, Mauritania, and Guinea-Bissau. Of course, they will be meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump to ostensibly discuss commercial interests. So that's what's happening next week. We'll also talk to you about the Crown Her Conference that's been organized by the Salvation Army Southern Africa Territory Women's Military. That's coming up here on the show.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet, Channel 628. Nelson Mandela taught us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it.
We should all bear in mind that the greatest glory of living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time you fall.
This Mandela Month, Channel Africa salutes everyday heroes. On Channel Africa, the African perspective. Catch us on Satellite Channel PAS 10. 1 hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tshepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And it's 22 minutes past 9. Just a reminder that you are more than welcome to reach out to us, share your thoughts, your perspective, your African perspective on some of the stories that we're covering here on Africa World Hour. We are speaking on myriad issues, on continental issues, international issues, geopolitics, politics, the economy, but what's also important is what's happening in your world. So do reach out to us and let us know. +27 63 406 9126. That's the WhatsApp line if you want to send us a voice note or send us an SMS. And if you want to speak to us via social media, we are on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Channel Africa 1. Reach out to us there. And of course, you can also speak to us on email, info@Channel Africa. By the way, if you want to watch us live, if you're not already, that's on YouTube at Channel Africa 1, as we mentioned, on OpenView channel, as well as on the SABC Plus app. Just Download that, and of course you can watch us there. We are on the DSTV Audio Bouquet 802. Now, US President Donald Trump says he's not happy with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Speaking at a press briefing during a cabinet meeting at the White House, Trump said the United States got a lot of BS thrown at them, to quote him, by President Putin, using the full expletive to emphasize his point. Sherman Bryce Pease reports that U.S. efforts to broker a ceasefire in Russia and Russia's war against Ukraine have so far faltered, and that Washington's posture might also be shifting as a result. More for Sherman Bryce Pease.
The headlines say it all. Take Politico. Trump finally fed up with Putin, teases more Russian sanctions. Or The Guardian with this: has Trump-Putin bromance finally run its course? Or NBC News: Trump unloads on Putin after promising more military aid to Ukraine. After these comments from President Trump during Tuesday's cabinet meeting at the White House.
We're not happy with Putin. I'm not happy with Putin. I can tell you that much right now, because he's killing a lot of people. And a lot of them are his soldiers and their soldiers, mostly. And it's now up to 7,000 a week. And I'm not happy with Putin. We get a lot of bull thrown at us by Putin, for you want to know the truth. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
As if to dismiss the criticism, Russia launched a record 728 drones at Ukraine overnight, the latest in a series of escalating air assaults in recent weeks that have involved not only drones but ballistic missiles that have strained Ukraine's air defenses, with Trump promising additional defensive weapons to Ukraine in this exchange with journalists.
Last week, the Pentagon paused some shipments of weapons to Ukraine. Did you approve of that pause?
We wanted to put defensive weapons because Putin is not treating human beings right. He's killing too many people. So we're sending some defensive weapons to Ukraine, and I've approved that.
So who ordered the pause last week?
I don't know. What did you tell me?
Trump also said he was considering supporting a Senate sanctions package against Russia that could include 500% tariffs on countries that purchase Russian oil, gas, and uranium, among other Russian exports.
I'm looking at it, yeah. No, I'm looking. The Senate is passing and passed a very, very tough sanctions. But yeah, I'm looking at it.
Can you sign that?
It's an optional bill. It's totally at my option. They pass it totally at my option, and to terminate totally at my option. And I'm looking at it very strongly.
Noting Trump's criticism, this was the Kremlin's response through spokesperson Dmitry Peskov.
We are quite calm about this. First of all, Trump has, so to speak, a rather tough style in terms of the phrases he uses, and so on. We also heard a very important statement by Trump that the settlement of the Ukrainian conflict turned out to be much more difficult than he thought from the very beginning. This is what we have been saying from the very beginning, that it is not possible to resolve the conflict overnight. Therefore, we are calm about this. We expect to continue our dialogue with Washington and our line on repairing the rather broken bilateral relations.
While Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said Tuesday that he had ordered expanded contacts with the United States to ensure critical deliveries of military supplies.
I instructed the Minister of Defense and the Commander-in-Chief to intensify all contacts with the American side. We currently have the necessary political statements and decisions, and we must implement them as quickly as possible to protect our people and positions. This primarily concerns air defense, as well as all other elements of supply from the U.S. These are critical deliveries that mean saving lives and protecting Ukrainian cities and villages. I expect results from these contacts very soon, and this week we are preparing formats for meetings of our military and political teams.
As initial rounds of talks between Russia and Ukraine, mediated by the United States, has delivered little progress towards a cessation of hostilities that could lead to further substantive peace talks, President Trump returned to the White House in January after promising to end the Russia-Ukraine war within 24 hours, despite widespread skepticism around such a sweeping pronouncement. Trump also floated additional sanctions against Russia for months, but has favored a diplomatic track thus far, frustrating European allies who have remained cautious amid what was viewed as somewhat of a détente between Washington and Moscow. 2 rounds of ceasefire talks between Russia and Ukraine have taken place this year, but those efforts now appear to have stalled. The question now remains, what will President Trump do next? I'm Sherwin Bryce-Pease in New York.
And now to Cameroon, where opposition political parties they're meeting in Yaoundé have failed to produce a single candidate to face 92-year-old Paul Biya in the Central African state's October presidential elections. Civil society groups and analysts say if the country's so far fragmented opposition fails to unite to face Biya, the incumbent, who is the world's oldest leader, will unsurprisingly win to extend his 4-decade rule. Moki Kinzega reports from Yaoundé.
About 30 opposition party leaders in Cameroon have been meeting in Yaoundé to present a single candidate to face 92-year-old Paul Biya in the country's October presidential election. Biya has ruled Cameroon for over 4 decades, and the opposition often accuses him of rigging elections to maintain his grip on power. Opposition political parties say if they unite and present a single candidate, they will increase their chances of victory in the polls. Surprisingly, all of the opposition political party leaders attending the meetings in Yaoundé insist that they will be candidates in the elections. Prince Michael Ngwese Ekoso, national president of the opposition United Socialist Democratic Party, is one of them. He says a consensual candidate should be one who will be ready to make Cameroon a federal republic with the English-speaking and French-speaking regions of the country constituting 2 federal states because of their linguistic, historic and cultural identities.
The reason why I am running for the presidential election in Cameroon stems from a vision which is rooted on the principles of one nation, 2 systems within the context of a federal constitution. I have not only the stamina but the moral ability to solve the problems of Cameroonians, especially when it comes to the crisis that has been rocking the English-speaking regions of Cameroon.
Cameroon's civil society groups say the opposition failing to agree on a single candidate will mean giving victory to Paul Biya to continue his over 4-decade rule. Edward Faure, member of Cameroon's civil society, says Cameroonians who are craving for a change want the opposition to be united and strong in facing Biya instead of competing in dispersed ranks.
I don't know if our opposition leaders know what Cameroonians want. Everyone is coming and announcing his or her candidacy. I see this as greed, total greed on the part of our opposition leaders. It is greed. The consequences can be very disastrous if the opposition doesn't take power in October.
Faure says it is high time the fragmented opposition gets united to revive all state institutions Biya has ruined, organize an inclusive national dialogue to end the separatist crisis that has claimed more than 6,000 lives in Cameroon's western regions, and improve living conditions for those stuck in hunger and poverty. He says a consensual candidate should be one who will rule for a maximum period of 3 years, during which free, fair and transparent elections will be organized. Prince Mokoso says all is not lost, although the opposition is yet to be united in agreeing on a single candidate to face Biya.
It's true that there are many candidates that have declared themselves, but we must understand that there are many other different perspectives that we are working on to produce a consensual candidate of the opposition party. It is not an impossibility, so let us wait and see between now and probably the end of July.
While the opposition remains divided, Cameroon's ruling party, the CPDM, has been meeting to mobilize support for Biya come October. Senator Tabe Tando is a supporter of President Paul Biya.
We, the members of the party, have repeatedly said that he is our candidate, not necessarily by the constitution of the party, but by his deeds and works, by his posture, by his dreams, by his visionary ability to what he wants for the people of Cameroon. So we have been invited to be reminded that he is our candidate. It's agreed. We have also come to reaffirm to him through our Secretary General of the Presidency that he should tell him that we have adopted an irreversible position that come October he's going to be our party candidate. We are going to vote for him.
The Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Central Africa reports that Cameroon's fragmented opposition, which is made up of about 400 political parties, will find it difficult to beat Biya or any CPDM candidate in an election should the opposition fail to unite. Reporting for Channel Africa, this is Moki Kinzeka in Yaoundé, Cameroon.
SABC Sport brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about the Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and the ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. Starting 13 July at 7:30 p.m. on SABC2. Tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache and the heroics that made rugby history. Stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere, no subscription needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. on SABC2. Be there when history shines. It is now just about 25 minutes to 10. We continue with Africa World Hour and hoping that we will bring you more information on this. We mentioned a summit that will be underway that will involve the South African Human Rights Commission. It's a 2-day high-level summit on human rights and disinformation in the city of Gqeberha. The summit will bring together national and international partners to speak about human rights institutions across Africa and beyond on the threat posed by disinformation. So hoping that we will be able to bring that to you in just a moment. But now we follow up on a story that's really been topical in South Africa. And I'm sure many who are watching the country. The National Commissioner of the South African Police Services, General Fani Masemola, revealing that KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi has been receiving threats and his security has been beefed up. This after Mkhwanazi made corruption allegations against senior police officials, including the country's Minister Senzo Mchunu. Mkhwanazi has accused them of having links with criminal syndicates, including drug cartels in the Gauteng province and interfering in police operations. Nhlanhla Mahlangu has more.
KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi has dominated public discourse in South Africa after he made damning allegations against Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, Deputy National Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Shadrack Sibiya, and other high-placed authorities in South Africa on Sunday. Masemola addressed journalists virtually on Wednesday from a facility in Vanderbay Park, Gauteng, where he revealed that the security system around the provincial commissioner has been upgraded. Masemola says Mkhwanazi needs protection.
In terms of physical protection, you know that, as I said, he's been getting threats to his life in that province. We have beefed up his security. But he won't be persecuted. From my side, surely there will be no persecution of any member of South African Police Service, not only him, but anyone.
KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi alleged at the weekend that senior police officials were involved in corruption and interfered in crime-fighting operations. He accused the police ministry of interference in police operations and detailed how the minister and his associate Brown Mokhotsi had been entangled with the South African police service provider businessman Vusimuzi Ket Matlala, who had been awarded a multi-million-dollar tender with the Enforcement Agency in 2024. Matlala is an alleged criminal mastermind and tender king, while Mokhotsi is alleged to be politically connected. A statement released by Mchunu's ministry denied that the minister ever met controversial Matlala. More from Police Ministry spokesperson Kamogelo Mokhotsi.
The minister has never met Mr. Matlala, has never spoken to him, nor has the minister ever requested or received anything from him. The minister did, however, initiate a review of the SAPS tender awarded to him when suspicions of possible wrongdoing surfaced. It was the same tender which has since been terminated. Furthermore, Whilst the minister knows and has met Mr. Brown Mogotsi, he is just a comrade and not an associate of the minister. The minister has never requested or received anything from him.
Mkhwanazi has said he will be opening a case against Mchunu for alleged interference in policing matters. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Ntlanhla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
Okay, so let's continue then. We mentioned earlier on that we will be telling you about a 2-day summit that will take place in Gqeberha, city of Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. It will be hosted by the South African Human Rights Commission, hosted to be hosted, as we mentioned. It's called the Human Rights and Disinformation Summit. It's brought together national and international partners, including human rights institutions from across Africa and beyond, to reflect on the growing threat posed by disinformation to constitutional rights, democratic participation, access to services, and social cohesion. We're joined now by the South African Human Rights Commission Chair, Chris Nissen. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Good evening. Is it Tepeso?
Tepeso, yes, indeed.
Tepeso. Thank you so much, and my apologies for yesterday, and I'm very happy that we're able now to connect. And good evening to all your listeners, and to your listeners and your good self. Thank you for taking so much interest in the South African Human Rights Commission's activities. Yes, indeed, we had that 2-day summit, and which is very important because, the issue about misinformation, disinformation, and all of that creates such problems for us, not in the country, but also in the world.
So what is the context in South Africa and the continent at large, just when we talk about how big the threat of disinformation is, particularly to those areas that we spoke about, democratic participation, constitutional rights, and access to services such, and obviously we'll get to the social cohesion aspect in just a moment.
Sure. You must understand that in the cyberspace, there's a lot of bullying, and bullying also has at the basis misinformation, because if I don't like you, I say something about you. And that something may be very bad, and it does affect your personality, your character, and your emotions. So, and because of the ITC in the world, that it can be anywhere in the world that you can say something to anybody. So our concern is that, and I'll come to the political side, but for now, our concern is the issue that when you spread anything on a social platform, if it's not true, if it's not factual, if it's not helpful, if it's not constructive, but if it's negative, that is not only misinformation and disinformation. It is also hurtful and bullying. But on the other side, we have seen in the last few weeks, what is called the white genocide. And, and then suddenly a country says, bring those people to us because white farmers are being murdered left, right, and center. That's misinformation. But it's not only misinformation, it's disinformation. And the big difference is misinformation when I tell you a wrong story and I don't follow the facts. But information is when I tell you a story that I know I deliberately, don't tell you the facts. I tell you lies. Disinformation is lies. Misinformation is when, I didn't understand, I didn't get the message right. So let me give you an example on this disinformation of white genocide. I mean, You know, statistics shows that in the rural farming community, murders are probably, on the farming communities, probably about between 60 and 65 murders per annum, which excludes farm workers' murders. But it's not 60. I mean, there's a guesstimate. But where I work, I was in the country. I was in Mitchell's Plain on Sunday, where we went to the motorcade on the murders that happened there. But between 4 areas in the Western Cape, I can go to Eldos, I can go to Soweto, but let me just give you where I was last week. Between Menenberg, Hanover Park, Guletu, and Soweto, and Nyanga, you have about almost like 40 murders a month, if not more. So when you say there's genocide of one community, and here you have like this other communities, if I take Motherwell, if I take Eldos, if I take Shisheo, you know, and I put all of those together, I mean, I can take all of those communities together.
Mr. Nissen,
and look at
allow
all
me
the
to
murders that happen.
interrupt and ask this question then. What is the impact then on such disinformation on the sovereignty of a state? Because as you say, it's misinformation around what is actually happening in South Africa, which affects a lot more people, different races.
It is unprotected. It's really trying to do the country down. It's doing the country down. And it's trying to resuscitate the supremacy of white people. And I think it's wrong. But this information is also about trying to, bring the country as this state of this country that everything is going wrong. We are saying, let us deal with information that can help us to engage government with the correct information and tell them, this is where you're wrong. These are the facts. This is what we need to do. This is how we need to do it, you see? So that is where we are when we say we need to deal with this information. Let me take another issue as well.
Okay.
You know, the question of the LGBTI and transgender communities. Let me take the issue about GBV. Mm-hmm. But let me start with the one that I've mentioned. We send so many bad messages on that community, so that when we look at each other, we say, oh, you are this, you are that, and we stigmatize and victimize people. On GBV, I mean, I hear stories, for example, when I go into a community, no, she's my wife, she needs to be taught a lesson. I mean, how can you say that? How can you say that? And that goes into community. No, let's go to the elders, let's talk to them about these issues. How can we do that? You understand? So it's a whole range and it's a circle of where misunderstandings which result into misinformation and disinformation around how we do that. But on the international scale, that's what we focused on in our meetings, because we had all these other organizations there with us, NHRIs, etc. It was about how do we spread the right message on number of issues, ranging across human rights issues across the global sector, that we spread, that we must say these are the right messages. Respect for human dignity, respect for human rights, respect on every level of society. So that is what we try to do through that workshop. It is not to say, can we stop stigmatize? Can we stop, victimize? and uses information, disinformation and misinformation to do that to our fellow human beings.
To bolster, as you say, principles of democracy and put an end to what corrodes our democratic rights. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Chris Nissen is...
Thank you so much. I'm sorry about yesterday.
Not a problem.
But always there for you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nissen.
Goodbye.
Thank you. South African Human Rights Commission Chair Chris Nissen speaking to us about that summit that they held in Gqeberha recently.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Anaitwa Daniel Etienne Benson. Huyu alizaliwa mwaka 1997, ilikuwa Mei 14, na anajulikana kitaalamu kabisa kwa jina la muziki BNXN. Haya, ni mwanamuziki huyo, ni mwimbaji kutoka nchini Nigeria, mtunzi wa nyimbo na mtayarishaji wa record label. Ameshirikiana na Rema kwenye wimbo huu. Rema vile vile ni msanii kutoka huko nchini Nigeria.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. 1 hour, 1 continent, 1 voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Mzansi, this is more than just a game, it's a celebration of history. 30 years ago, the Springboks united our nation with that iconic Rugby World Cup victory. And now the mighty Boks are back. Don't miss South Africa versus Italy in the 30th anniversary commemoration match this Saturday, 12th July at 1600 hours. Watch live on SABC2 or stream it anywhere on the SABC Plus app. Download the SABC Plus app today on iOS, Android or your smart TV. Switch to stream, no subscription. SABC Sport, for the love of the game. It is now 10 minutes to 9. Let's continue with our offering here on Africa World Hour. The Crown Her Conference, that's what we're talking about now, is organized by the Salvation Army Southern Africa Territory Women's Ministry. It's set to bring together over 2,000 women from across Southern Africa from 11 to 13 July 2025 in Soweto, South Africa. It's all about empowering women through inspiring sessions on leadership, community impact and fellowship, while celebrating the important role that they play in their families and community. A very good evening to you, and thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel Nokuthula Mahlobo, who's the Salvation Army Southern Africa Territory spokesperson or representative tonight. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you, Tsepiso?
I'm well, thanks. Tell me about the history of this Crown Her celebration or conference that we are seeing this upcoming weekend.
We have our territorial leaders who are retiring in December. They are originally from Brazil. So as they enter retirement, our territorial president for Women's Ministry, who is Commissioner Daisy Eliazin, asked if there can be a gathering for women across the Southern Africa territory, which is South Africa, Lesotho, Eswatini, Namibia and St. Helena. So she asked if we could meet together as women so that we can just have something that make us to come together, as this is her last year in Southern Africa and also entering retirement as a Salvation Army officer. So we met from the different provinces where the Salvation Army is and came up with a theme to say, okay, can we come up with a theme that will activate women with a theme that says Crown Her? And this is a transformative conference that honors and affirms the God-given worth of every woman and girl, rooted in a powerful promise of Isaiah 61, verse 3, which speaks about
Are you still with us, Lieutenant?
Oh, yes, so sorry.
Okay, so let's talk about, you said something very interesting, and I'm actually just thinking about, you're speaking about religion, and and you're about to quote the Bible, but I was just thinking, being a woman, a girl child in South Africa in this era, it almost feels like wearing a crown of thorns, and I'm of course referencing to that which Jesus encountered. So how are you going to inspire these women or girl children who live in such difficult circumstances? What are you hoping to get through to them?
Tsepiso, the scripture that we chose for crown hair is Isaiah 61 verse 3. Just that part, the best that we say, Isaiah 61 verse 3b, it says, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes. So our theme is just around that, us crowning each other. We are not waiting to be princesses or queens somewhere else, but within the church, we start to crown each other, we start to honor each other, we start to fix each other's crown and be supportive to one another. So this conference is to inspire all women from the ages of 14 upwards, where we are saying we want them to be inspired, empowered, and be able to come across whatever difficult challenges that are facing them, wherever they are, wherever they come from, but leaving the conference with a thinking that I am able, I am a queen, I'm a princess, so I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
What kind of skills would you impart to them, and whether it's through talks or access to information or networks? Just tell us a little bit more about what you've envisioned for this coming together.
What we have envisioned is to have praise and worship, is to have speakers that are going to speak life in this different age of women. We have Rorisang Tandekiso, a very famous a radio presenter, a TV personality who's well known, who preaches gospel. So we thought if we invite her, she's a young woman who have spoken a lot about purity, who has encouraged women, who's famous but able to keep within the religious way of living or within keeping the Christian standards. So having her, we think that will motivate women, especially the younger generation, because she's also young. And also we've got people who speak about mental health, which is a challenge in our Africa, in every part of the world. Will face challenges in terms of mental health. So we've got speakers who speak on that, so that women are encouraged to speak, not to be ashamed when they come across challenges of depression, all these things that has to do with mental health. We are talking about those things. And also we have a lady who was who entered the competition of Mrs. South Africa and become a finalist, but she did not win. This is Mrs. Peters. She'll also speak about how to have a business, but also be able to continue worshiping God and continue being successful as a businesswoman. Okay. So these are the kind of people that we are going to be having as the guests as the speakers.
Just finally, to round up, you spoke about Rorisang, and you say part of what she's going to be doing is showing her own personal story on her journey with Salvation Army. If you could just share, you've played a very important, significant role in South African society and other countries in Southern Africa. What you offer today as the Salvation Army to communities?
As the Salvation Army, we are a church, but also we are a charity organization. So we are very much involved in communities. Whenever there are disasters, you'll see the Salvation Army. Wherever there are challenges within communities, you'll see the Salvation Army. As I am Lieutenant Colonel, we are ordained ministers. So we preach the gospel, but also not only just preaching the gospel, but getting our hands dirty into getting into communities, into helping out when there are challenges, but also being a support system within the communities as the church.
And your funding, have you experienced any challenges given the fact that it's a worldwide thing of donor funding drying up?
Yes, I think as the church, we are facing challenges financially and getting funding, but we still have people who do give to the Salvation Army. We still have our church members also contribute to the Salvation Army, but I cannot run away or shy away from the fact that we no longer have funding as much as we used to in the previous years. So it is a challenge.
Well, we pray that you go with God and that you are able to get the resources that you need to help those in need. And all the best with her, with your Crown Her summit that you're going to be having this weekend. Lieutenant Colonel Nokuthula Mahlobo of the Salvation Army Southern Africa Territory. Well, as we wind up Africa World Hour, we're going to be speaking to Shayla Ndikumana in just a moment to tell us what's happening on Africa, or rather on Hotlines. This is Africa World Hour and will remain every day, Monday to Friday, for 60 minutes. But we find out now about Hotlines, so what to expect this evening with Shayla Ndikumana. Good evening.
Hi, ma'am. How are you?
Well, thank you. How are you?
Listen, I'm breathing. I think I'll leave it at that because today I decided to test myself as opposed to coming down the stairs. I came up.
Oh,
yeah.
You've been doing the coming down thing.
Absolutely. More step count. I can take my time. I'm not panting.
But you can feel the difference when you come up, huh?
Man, my chest has all the things to say, but we're not going to focus on that right now. Let's talk about Hotlines. So I don't know if you heard of the Grace Mondlane saga. So she is a South African influencer, and her ex-boyfriend passed on. Mm-hmm. And so she decided to take the duties of tending to the funeral planning, which was quite interesting for the public because she documented this entire experience. And I think more than anything else, people were questioning, you have a partner, what are you doing there? You know, and your ex-partner had a partner. And so how are you mitigating that? However, that is not the focal point. That conversation inspired a deeper search into funeral cover and what the precedent is. Can you apply for somebody or put somebody under your funeral plan if they're not your spouse?
Or your relative.